It started subtly, a missed call here, a delayed text there. Then, the silence grew, a chasm opening between me and my son Michael. He was my world, my only child, and suddenly he was gone. Not physically, but emotionally, spiritually. I racked my brain, replaying every conversation, every interaction, searching for a reason, a clue. The silence was deafening, a constant hum of unanswered questions. What had I done? What had I missed? The ache in my chest was a physical weight, a constant reminder of the son I was losing and the mystery that was tearing my heart apart. I knew I had to find out why, even if the truth shattered me. The last time I saw Michael, truly saw him, was at his 30th birthday party. He was beaming, surrounded by friends, his new girlfriend Sarah by his side. I remember feeling a surge of pride, a quiet contentment that my son was happy, successful, and building a life for himself. We hugged, he thanked me for everything, and I left with a heart full of joy. That was 6 months ago. The calls became less frequent than the texts. At first, I attributed it to his busy schedule, his demanding job as an architect, and the newness of his relationship. I'd send him little messages, asking about his day, offering to cook his favorite meal, suggesting we catch up. His replies were brief, sometimes just an emoji or a curt busy. My friends, bless their hearts, tried to reassure me. He's a grown man, Eleanor, Brenda would say. They all go through this phase. He'll come back around, but this felt different. This wasn't the usual pulling away of a young adult establishing independence. This was a deliberate, calculated withdrawal. He stopped answering my calls altogether. My voicemails filled. With increasing concern, went unreturned. I tried Sarah, hoping she could shed some light, but her phone went straight to voicemail too. It was as if they had both vanished, swallowed by some invisible force. The silence was a physical presence. In my small apartment, a constant reminder of the void Michael had left. I found myself staring at his childhood photos, remembering the bright-eyed boy who used to tell me everything, who would run to me with scraped knees and broken toys, seeking comfort and solutions. Where was that boy now? What had happened to the open communication we once shared? The fear began to creep in, a cold, insidious dread that something was terribly wrong. Was he in trouble? Was he ill? The possibilities gnawed at me, stealing my sleep and my appetite. I started driving by his apartment just to see if his lights were on, if his car was there. It felt desperate, I knew, but I was desperate. The need to understand, to break through this impenetrable wall of silence was consuming me. I even considered showing up at his office, but pride and a lingering hope that he would eventually reach out held me back. I clung to the belief that this was a misunderstanding, a temporary estrangement that would soon pass. But deep down, a darker truth began to whisper, a truth I was terrified to acknowledge. The turning point came with the mail, a thick, official-looking envelope addressed to Michael but sent to my old address, the house where he grew up. It was from a law firm. My heart pounded as I held it, a mix of apprehension and a strange sense of hope. Perhaps this was it, the explanation I desperately craved. I knew it was wrong to open his mail, but the maternal instinct to protect, to understand, overrode any sense of propriety. My hands trembled as I tore open the seal. His father, my ex-husband David. The lawsuit was about a trust fund I knew nothing about. It was set up by David's wealthy aunt, who had passed away years ago. David, as the trustee, had been systematically draining it for years. The dates, the amounts, the legal jargon, it was all a blur. All I could focus on was the betrayal. David, the man I had spent 20 years of my life with, the father of my son, had been stealing from his own child. And Michael, my son, was suing him. This was why he had gone silent. This was the secret. He wasn't just pulling away from me. He was pulling away from everything connected to his past, to us. The realization hit me like a physical blow. All this time, I had been blaming myself, agonizing over what I might have done wrong, when the truth was far more insidious. My ex-husband, the man who had always presented himself as a pillar of integrity, was a thief. And Michael, caught in the crossfire, was dealing with it alone. The shame, the anger, the profound sadness, it was overwhelming. I felt a desperate need to reach out to Michael, to explain, to apologize for something I didn't even know about. But what could I say? How could I possibly make sense of this? The letter lay open on my kitchen table, a stark testament to the hidden lives people lead and the devastating consequences of their secrets. My son was fighting a battle I knew nothing about, and I, his mother, was on the sidelines, helpless and heartbroken. The next few days were a blur of frantic research and agonizing over what to do. I dug through old financial statements, divorce papers, anything that might shed light on David's dealings. There was nothing. He had always been meticulous, almost Obsessively so with his finances. The trust fund, it seemed, was a well-kept secret, even from me. I felt a fresh wave of anger, not just at David, but at myself. How could I have been so blind, so trusting? I had always believed in David's honesty, even after our divorce. We had maintained a civil, if distant, relationship for Michael's sake. Now, that civility felt like a cruel joke, a facade behind which he had been systematically robbing our son. I considered calling David, confronting him, but what good would that do? He would deny everything, twist the truth, as he always did, when cornered. And what about Michael? He was clearly trying to handle this on his own, and my interference might only push him further away. But the thought of him going through this alone, battling his own father, was unbearable. He was my son, and I had to protect him, even if he didn't want my protection. I decided to try Sarah again. Maybe she knew more. Maybe she could tell me how Michael was truly doing. This time, to my surprise, she answered. Her voice was strained, tired. She confirmed that Michael was indeed struggling, consumed by the lawsuit, by the betrayal. He had cut off contact with everyone, even her. For a brief period, overwhelmed by the weight of it all, she understood why he hadn't told me, explaining that he didn't want to burden me or involve me in the messy legal battle with David. He saw it as his fight, his burden to bear. My heart ached for him. He was trying to be strong, to be independent, but he was just a boy. My boy, caught in a man's fight. Sarah also revealed that Michael had been living with her for the past few months, unable to face his own apartment, which he associated with his father's visits and the facade of their relationship. The news brought a small measure of relief. At least he wasn't completely alone. But it also deepened my resolve. I couldn't stand by and watch my son suffer in silence. I had to do something, anything, to help him navigate this treacherous path. The question was, what? And how could I do it without alienating him further? Armed with the knowledge from Sarah, I decided on a new approach. Instead of direct confrontation, I would offer subtle support, a lifeline he could grasp if he chose. I started by sending him a care package, not filled with advice or questions, but with his favorite homemade cookies, a new book by an author he admired, and a handwritten note that simply said, "Thinking of you." No pressure to reply, just, "No, I'm here." It felt small, almost insignificant, but it was all I could do without overstepping. Days turned into a week, and still no word. The silence was still there, but now it felt different, less accusatory, more like a fragile, quiet. I continued my research, delving into the intricacies of trust law, trying to understand the legal labyrinth Michael was navigating. I even consulted a lawyer friend, discreetly, without revealing the full details, just to get a general understanding of such cases. The more I learned, the more I realized the depth of David's deception, and the immense pressure Michael must be under. Then, one evening, my phone buzzed. A text from Michael. My heart leaped. It was short, just a simple thanks for the cookies. "Mom, they were good. It wasn't much, but it was a start." It was a crack in the wall, a tiny glimmer of hope. I resisted the urge to bombard him with questions, to pour out all my anxieties and apologies. Instead, I replied, "Glad you liked them. No rush, but if you ever want to talk, I'm here." The next day, another text. This one was longer. He told me about the stress of the lawsuit, the endless meetings with lawyers, the emotional toll of confronting his own father in court. He didn't mention the trust fund directly or David's betrayal, but the subtext was clear. He was hurting and he was tired. He was finally letting me in just a little. I felt a profound sense of relief, mixed with a renewed determination to help him in any way I could. This wasn't about me or my feelings about David. This was about Michael and his healing. I knew this was just the beginning, but at least the silence was broken. The path ahead was still uncertain, but we were no longer walking it alone. Our communications slowly, tentatively began to mend. Text messages became more frequent than short phone calls. He still didn't want to talk about the lawsuit in detail, but he started sharing other aspects of his life again. His work, his plans with Sarah, even mundane things like what he had for dinner. It was a fragile bridge, but it was there. I continued to offer quiet support, sending him articles I thought he might find interesting, or just a simple thinking of you message. I never pushed, never pried. I learned to listen, truly listen, to the unspoken words, to the nuances in his voice. He was still guarded, but the anger and resentment that had hardened his voice earlier seemed to be softening, replaced by a weary resignation. One afternoon, he called me, his voice tight with a mix of frustration and something else, a hint of vulnerability I hadn't heard in months. "Mom," he said, "I need your help." My heart leaped. This was it. He was finally asking. He explained that his lawyer needed some old financial records, documents from when he was a child. related to his father's income and assets around the time the trust was supposedly established. Records I might have tucked away in old boxes from the divorce. I immediately offered to go through everything. It was a tedious task, sifting through years of paperwork, but I did it with a fierce determination. Each document I found felt like a small victory, a step closer to helping my son. As I went through the boxes, I stumbled upon a small, leather-bound journal. It was David's. I remembered him carrying it everywhere in the early years of our marriage before he became so secretive. Curiosity and a desperate need to understand the man who had caused so much pain compelled me to open it. Like what I found. Inside was a chilling revelation, far more disturbing than any financial deception. It wasn't just about money. It was about control, about a deep-seated resentment towards me and a twisted desire to manipulate Michael against me. The journal detailed his plans, his subtle machinations to undermine my relationship with Michael even after the divorce. He had been poisoning Michael's mind slowly, insidiously for years. The trust fund was just another tool in his arsenal, a way to further his agenda. The betrayal I felt was immense, a deeper cut than the financial one. This wasn't just about money. It was about a deliberate attempt to steal my son's affection, to rewrite our shared history. The journal lay open in my hands, a testament to a darkness I had never truly comprehended. My son's silence, his withdrawal suddenly made a terrifying kind of sense. He wasn't just reacting to the trust fund. He was reacting to years of subtle manipulation, years of being caught in a silent war he didn't even know he was fighting. I closed the journal, my hands shaking. The path ahead was even more complicated than I had imagined. How could I tell Michael this? How could I expose his father's true nature without destroying what little trust we had managed to rebuild? The truth, while liberating for me, could be devastating for him. To learn of the emotional manipulation, the calculated attempts to turn him against me, might break him. I decided to approach it cautiously. I gathered the financial documents Michael needed, making sure to include a few pages from the journal that were less accusatory, more observational, hinting at David's controlling nature without directly revealing his malicious intent, but leaving him the choice to delve deeper. When Michael came to pick up the documents, he was still guarded, but there was a new softness in his eyes. He thanked me genuinely for my help. As he gathered the papers, his gaze fell on the journal. He picked it up, a flicker of recognition in his eyes. "Dad's old journal," he murmured. "I remember this." He flipped through a few pages, his brow furrowing. I held my breath, my heart pounding. He paused on one of the pages I had marked, his eyes scanning the familiar handwriting. A muscle twitched in his jaw. He didn't say anything, just closed the journal and tucked it under his arm with the other documents. The silence that followed was heavy, pregnant with unspoken truths. I wanted to reach out to explain, to comfort him, but I knew I had to let him process it in his own time. He left shortly after, the journal a silent companion in his arms. I spent the rest of the day in a state of anxious anticipation, wondering if I had done the right thing. Had I pushed him too far? Had the first jeopardized the fragile peace we had found? The waiting was agonizing, each passing hour stretching into an eternity. The truth, once revealed, has a way of reshaping everything, for better or worse. I could only hope that for Michael, it would ultimately lead to healing, even if the path was fraught with pain.